It all started on the outskirts of the forest. A small detachment fought with goblins. The young man shot an arrow at the goblin and smiled that he hit the target. He noticed something to the side and saw the Goblin King quickly approaching them. He broke the stone and began throwing fragments at people, and one of these fragments flew straight at the young man, but he managed to dodge in time and stop to take aim. The goblin was quickly approaching him, but he had already managed to aim an arrow at its head. This young man's name is Taro Sato. He is an adventurer and he is going to survive in this world. He will conquer the fantasy world alone. Since childhood, he has been obsessed with fantasy isekai, and his main dream was to go to another world. In elementary school, he even organized a magic club, immersing himself in research. But he overdid it a little, to the point that he even made the news, and he was already thinking about giving up his dream because of it. But he simply could not let go of his longing for another world. He entered a prestigious university known for its challenging academic programs, also that he could join their age-old community of dark magic. And now, finally, he waited for this great day. He spent his whole life searching for how to get to another world. Usually people get hit by a truck and accidentally end up in another world, but he goes there himself. He began to draw a magic circle on the floor and said that he was going to find good friends, do tasks there and enjoy the fantasy world that he had always dreamed of. He swallowed his saliva excitedly and looked at the magic circle drawn on the floor. This is the goal of his whole life. He reached into his backpack and pulled out a small knife, after which he cut his finger and said that given the 100-year history of this society, the data accumulated by his predecessors, and, he hopes, the correct calculations, this step should be the final one. A drop of blood fell into the center of the magic circle and he spread his arms to the sides in anticipation. He closed his eyes and held his breath, but after a few seconds he realized that nothing was happening. There was no reaction and he began to circle around the circle with the hope that something would happen. He looked at the shelf with plush toys and an idea came to him. He took a toy named Paquita and asked it for forgiveness, but it must become his victim. He placed the stuffed animal in the center of the magic circle and began to wait. But again nothing happened and he asked in disappointment, still nothing. He rose to his feet and looked at the plush toy, after which he turned around and was about to leave, but suddenly the circle lit up and he thought that this couldn't be happening. Ghostly hands began to emerge from the magic circle and he was glad that he did it. He was finally able to do it. But suddenly ghostly hands began to embrace him from all sides and close on his neck. Hands lifted him into the air and he began to jerk his legs convulsively, but at some point he stopped. After that, he heard an old voice that said that it seemed that he had finally come to his senses. He slowly opened his eyes and saw an old man in front of him, next to whom stood a green-haired girl. The old man said that he had done such a stupid thing. Taro was surprised and the old man told him to look at it. An excerpt from the morning news appeared before Taro's eyes and he thought, what is this? The news anchor said that 4th-year student Taro Sato was found dead in the university club room today. Taro saw his image on the screen and asked, is that him? Is he really dead? He grabbed his head and asked, does that mean he's dead now? He smiled and asked, but the magic still worked. The old man answered wearily that something like that. But in his world, the gods never taught people magic. It's surprising that he learned about it himself. Taro looked around and asked, really? The old man said that it was really impressive, but the magic circle he drew was not for transportation, but for rebirth. Taro thoughtfully asked, not displacement, but rebirth. The old man showed him a magic circle, which he drew and said that it was exactly like that. Moreover, the magic circle is incomplete since he did not indicate anywhere and into whom he will be reborn. Taro thought about his words and shouted that he screwed up. He sighed and suggested he change the subject. So, can he be reincarnated? Since Taro has always been fascinated by other worlds, he cannot miss this chance. If he is already dead, he must go to another world. The old man confirmed his words and said that reincarnation had been abolished a long time ago. Taro was surprised and the old man said that just recently a new law on the recycling of souls had been adopted, thanks to which reincarnation was resumed. Taro asked, the law of soul recycling. The old man said that as far as his case is concerned, the law states that using magic to reincarnate or be reborn is considered suicide, so he dies in the process. Taro pointed his finger at himself and exclaimed, did he commit suicide? The old man nodded and said that suicide is a sin. Suicide is seen as an attempt to interfere with the cycle of reincarnation. In addition, there are those who will plot and try to retain their abilities from their past life. So many of them end up in a terrible situation in their next life. Taro asked how terrible. The old man replied that it was quite terrible. For example, they are born, but immediately die or are born beggars and sold into slavery by cruel parents. Or they are reborn into monsters, demons or some kind of insects. It's a case of him just being grateful to be alive. Taro imagined himself in the role of a monster and insects and exclaimed that this would never happen. Anything, but not this. The old man said there was not much he could do. Taro asked what about cheating skills. The old man and the girl looked at each other and he asked, cheating skills? Is he talking about special skills? They exist in the world he controls, but there is nothing too powerful there. Taro asked if he could gain this skill when he was reincarnated. The old man thoughtfully stroked his beard and said that special skills are useful, but they need time and effort to awaken. In addition, the conditions for their awakening are usually difficult to fulfill. Taro thought the risk was worth it, but if he starts at a disadvantage, that means he'll need more than normal skills. He asked if he could have the most special skill. The old man laughed and said that even after everything he had said, he was still asking for it. Since he will be the first person to be reborn after the ban is lifted, he will honor his request. But he cannot make someone his favorite. The girl behind the old man giggled and he asked if he still agreed to this. Taro gathered his strength and shouted that he agreed. He can't back down now. The old man said that before he misunderstood him, let him make it clear. All memories from his past life will be erased. Taro was surprised and asked why no one told him this before. Could he please reconsider his decision? The old man said that he had already told him that he could not choose his favorites. Taro asked, does that mean he won't even remember their current conversation? The old man confirmed his words and said that everything that happened before reincarnation will be erased. He may not hope to cheat the system. Taro grabbed his head in disappointment and asked him to wait, then maybe he would just get the normal skill. But he didn't have time to finish. A table had already appeared in front of him, which endowed him with the skill. The skill began to be absorbed into his entire body and he, turning into a bright flash of light, began to fall into a new world. He found himself above the village, flying through the streets past merchants and ordinary townspeople until he turned the corner to the hooligans who were beating the dead young man. One of them rummaged through his wallet and said that there was not a single valuable thing on it. The soul of Taro entered the body of the dead young man and he opened his eyes. Through a cloudy veil, he saw 3 robbers slowly moving away from him and a voice in his head said that one of the conditions of a special skill had been activated. The return of the soul after death is confirmed. His memories of his previous life are obtained. Taro's hands were shaking and he was breathing heavily. He raised himself on his elbows and said that he still remembers everything. He stood up and said it was close. He's really in a terrible situation. But he had not yet managed to do anything that he wanted to do in the fantasy world. He managed to reincarnate and get his memories back. He can't die here. His name is Taro Sato. In his past life he had the same name. During his baptism, which took place at the age of 6, it turned out that he has a useless skill, the name of which contains a distorted text. After that, his alcoholic father decided to throw him into the forest border where there are monsters. He had no choice but to flee to the relatively large city of Seishi, which was 2 days' journey from his village. While the rich were enjoying life, the poor were sitting on the cold ground and trying to somehow survive. Life in the city turned out to be difficult. Every few days Taro somehow managed to get food. He walked further down the street, remembering moments from his current life and thought, what should he do now? He has no money, he is weak, and besides, he is still a child. He also doesn't have to count on the pity of others. This means he is left with an obvious and at the same time only choice. He walked further down the street and stopped in front of a small building. He looked up and saw a sign in front of him stating that this building belonged to the Adventurers Guild. He opened the doors and entered the guild, but they immediately started calling him a brat and told him to get out of here. Taro's stomach began to growl and he thought that it looked like things weren't going to be that simple. Suddenly some guy grabbed him by the clothes and called him a brat and told him not to ignore him. The girl called him Mob and told him to do without violence. The guy turned around and carried Taro by the scruff of the neck to the registration desk like a kitten. He put Taro on his feet in front of the girl and she whispered in his ear that he deliberately spoke to him first so that other adventurers would not mess with him. Taro looked at him and thought that he had finally met a kind person in this world. He told the girl that he would like to register. She said that she did not want to upset him, but for this he needed to pay an entry fee. Taro grabbed his head and exclaimed why no one told him this before. Is he really having deja vu? He asked how much is the entry fee. She replied that it would cost 10 silver coins. Taro got upset and said that he was finished. He thought that 10 silver coins was like 10,000 yen in his previous world. He would want to join even if he had to borrow money, but who would be willing to lend to a poor child? He began to cry and thought that besides, he had run away from the village, so he had no one who could vouch for him. Suddenly Mob threw a bag of coins in front of him and said that he would pay the fee for it. Taro looked at him in surprise and one of the guild members called out to Mob and said that if they touched this child once, he would immediately burst into tears. Mob turned in his direction and said that in that case they could make a bet. They will see if this child can work hard and return the 10 silver coins that he borrowed. While he was offering them a bet, Taro thought upset that he had become the object of their argument. The guild member shouted that this could hardly be called a bet. Someone agreed with him and said that no one would bet on a child. Mob looked at the upset Taro and said that in that case, he would bet on him. After that, other guild members joined in the argument and someone said that he bet 15 silver coins that he would run away. Another guild member said that he would bet 5 silvers that he would give up, and 20 on the fact that he will fall dead before he repays the debt. Mob laughed loudly and Taro looked at him and thought that despite the fact that his name sounds like a hostile creature, a mob, Mob is undoubtedly a good person. He put his hand to his heart and, calling him master, sincerely thanked him. Mob patted him on the head and told him not to misunderstand him and not to call him master. He left, and the girl behind the reception desk whispered to Taro that he was lucky. Mob was an orphan and became an adventurer after a hard life. He probably saw himself in him. She invited him to continue his registration and said that her name was Nay. Now they would know each other. She placed a crystal ball in front of him and told him to touch it. Taro raised his hand to the crystal ball and thought that it looked like the crystal ball from the baptism ceremony. He touched the crystal ball with both hands and a strong surge of energy occurred. A note appeared from the crystal ball with the name of the skill. Nay was surprised by this and asked if his skill was distorted text. After a short pause, Taro asked what does it mean when his skill consists of distorted text. She replied that she had never seen anything like this. For example, the skills of spearmen and sewing, by constantly practicing fighting with a spear and engaging in activities related to sewing. People can improve their skills and discover unique abilities, and the voice of the world will guide them in acquiring the skill. Taro asked, "Voice of the world?" She said that they also say that it is the voice of heaven and it helps everyone gain abilities. Taro replied that he understood. After that, he thought, could it be the same voice that he heard when he was on the verge of death and received back all his memories from his past life? Nay said that since he gained the garbled text skill, he probably doesn't know what field he should specialize in yet. But trying out different activities should clear things up, so let him give it his all. Taro replied that he would definitely be there, after which he thanked her and she asked him to wait here. Taro saw the device she approached and thought it looked like some kind of magical photocopier. Nay opened the lid of the device and put a note inside with the name of his skill. The device started printing and Taro thought that this really was a magical photocopier. Nay pulled out a printed item and handed it to Taro, saying that this was his badge, proving that he was a member of the Adventurers Guild. Let him think of it as an ID card. Taro took the pendant and thanked her, then looked at the engraving on it and Nay said that he should wear it around his neck. He put it around his neck and she said that now she will tell him about the Adventurers Guild. Everything is tied to a ranking system. Newcomers are assigned a rank of G-. As the contribution increases, its rank will increase to G, G+, F-, and so on. Taro thought that it seemed like he had a long way to go to reach all these ranks. Nay said that when he achieves a rank of B- and above, he will be considered an elite, and the highest rank is S+. But he needs to be careful, all the crimes he commits will be written on his badge. When he commits a crime, he is immediately expelled from the guild. He will also be handed over to the guards, despite the severity of the violation. There are a lot of rough adventurers here, but most of them follow the rules and complete quests, so don't worry. Taro looked at the growing fight between the guild members and thought that they looked rude, but were actually decent people. He told her that he would like to take the quest. She told him not to rush, it was just lunchtime. In honor of him becoming an adventurer, lunch will be at her expense. He asked happily, is this true? He thanked her and after that it was time for lunch. They came to the tavern and Nay, placing a tray of food in front of him, told him to help himself. Taro saw the mushroom soup with ham and Dutch oven bread in front of him and his mouth watered. He dipped a piece of bread into the soup and ate it. Tears flowed from his eyes and he thought it was so delicious. Nay watched with a smile as he enjoyed the food and said that she was still surprised. Did he really grow up in a rich family? He is polite and has good table manners. He looked up at her and she said that he shouldn't answer if it was a sore subject. He replied that it was not so. His family had only a poor farming household and his mother died shortly after his birth. At the age of 6 he ran away from home because they wanted to leave him in the forest. They asked if they wanted to get rid of hungry mouths. He replied that it was something like that. They often beat him, so he did not feel warm feelings towards them. He looked to the side and thought that the path to this city was difficult. On the way, he came across a huge minotaur, who began to chase him, but at one moment something pressed him to the ground and Taro saw how another monster attacked him. This is how he was able to get to the city of Seishi, but the city was not welcoming to such a weakling like him. They always fought over whatever scraps they could find, and then spent the night on the cold streets. He remembered how he looked at the piece of bread in the other boy's hand and thought that survival was his routine. But thanks to this dish, which he ate to the last drop, he will be able to live for several more days. Nay looked at him with a smile, and after that some time passed. Taro called out to Nay and said that he had completed the quest to clean the canals. Nay looked at Taro, who was covered in mud, and said that there was a well in the backyard, let him go and freshen up. The spare clothes may be too big for him, but he can still wear these. He thanked her, and then headed to the well. He lowered the bucket into the well and began to draw water, but at one moment someone called him a stinky one and he was scared out of surprise. He saw a bearded man who told him that he stinks. Taro cast a displeased glance at him and approached him and said that he actually stinks too. The man asked if he dare say it again. He patted him on the head and said he looked and smelled like he hadn't had a bath in forever. Even the rags he wears have changed color from the dirt. He leaves him no choice. He will heat up the water so that he can go and wash himself. Taro was surprised and thought that this bearded man was so kind. The man poured water into the barrel and Taro thought, how is he going to heat it? The man cast a spell and a flame wrapped around his hand, after which he dipped his hand in water and bubbles began to rise to the surface of the water. Taro thought, is he using magic? The water got hot enough and the man, hitting him on the back of the head, told him to get in quickly. Taro touched the warm water and thought it was his first bath in a long time. The last time was when he was 8 years old, since his previous life. The man did not wait until he himself climbed into the barrel and dipped him in there himself. He began to wash his hair and said that he thought he would lightly rub his head, but let him move his hands too. Taro agreed and began to rub his body. After the man bathed him, Taro thought that he felt alive again. Suddenly the voice of the world announced that he had activated the conditions of a special skill. The purification of many years of dirt was confirmed. Purification spell acquired. The man noticed his surprise and asked what happened. Taro replied that he had just heard the voice of the world. It seems that he has learned a purification spell. The man said that the conditions for learning purification magic definitely had to do with hot water. Taro asked, do conditions differ from person to person? The man confirmed his words and said that the same skill can be acquired in different ways. He had heard that natural talent also plays a role. One way to learn fire spells is to constantly light a fire. The key to acquiring a skill is to look for different approaches. Does that mean he got cleansed? He chuckled and said that who would have thought that he would master a rare spell under such circumstances. Taro was surprised and thought, is this a rare spell? The man handed him the clothes and told him to take it. Taro took the clothes and thanked him. In response, the man waved his hand and said that there was no need for gratitude. He would go and take a bath himself and let him get out of here. After some time, Taro stood at the notice board and looked at it carefully. At some point, Nay called out to him and said that the head of their guild branch wanted to talk to him. Taro became worried and thought, what could such a respected person want from him? After that, he went to the office of the head of the guild and, knocking, asked if he could come in. The man told him to come in and Taro saw a bearded man in front of him. Nay asked where are his manners. This is the head of the Leo branch. Taro shut his mouth and bowed to him and said that he wanted to thank him for today. Leo pointed to a chair and said that everything is fine, let him sit down. Taro sat down on a chair and Leo said that he heard from Nay that he has neither money nor shelter. Taro confirmed his words and Leo said that if so, then he has a proposal for him. The guild has a spare room with a bed, he can use it for free for a while. But in return, he will help Nay with cleaning and other chores, and of course, he will be paid for his work. Taro asked happily, is he sure? Leo closed his eyes and said that Nay insisted on this, and this is the least he can do. He knows he borrowed money from Mob, but he's still an adventurer in every way. If he ran away without returning the money, he would not only lose his title as an adventurer, but also harm the authority of their guild. Let him conduct himself with the honor of an adventurer. Taro agreed and Leo called him a kid, but suddenly he stopped short and called him by name and said that it seems he hit his head. Taro touched his wound and Leo said that let his wound be healed at the infirmary with the help of magic, and now he can be free. Taro went to the exit of his office and thanked him. After he left, Leo told Nay that as he and Mob mentioned, there was still a sparkle in his eyes. While the garbled text skill has its drawbacks, it should at least help him cope with the routine. After a while, Taro came to his room and looked at it with admiration. He jumped on the bed and said that he finally had his own bed again. He jumped on the bed and lay on his back, thinking that tomorrow he should give it his all. He closed his eyes, and when he opened them in the morning, he realized that he had overslept. After that, he ran to Nay and said that he was so sorry, he overslept. She wished him good morning and told him not to worry. Knowing what happened to him yesterday, she decided to let him sleep. He waved his hand at her and said that he was going to work. After that, he began cleaning the guild building, dusting off the shelves and sweeping the floors. He saw a crowd of people at the reception desk and thought they looked puzzled. He approached them and asked if he could help with anything. Someone answered that there were a lot of things, but he didn't think he could read. Taro replied that he could read and write without problems. He also knows arithmetic and should be able to handle something like simple filling out paperwork. He thought that all this was thanks to his memories from his past life. The guild members were surprised by this and Nay, turning him around, asked if he could read, write and read. He confirmed her words and she asked him to help them. After that, he started helping them with papers and someone asked, can he really read and write? Another guild member said that all he knows how to write and read is his name. Someone told him that he couldn't even write. but he says he can. Another guild member said that he could count to 10. His friend tapped him on the back and said that he was just adding and subtracting using his fingers. Under the surprised conversations of the guild members, Taro continued to work with the documents. At one point he suddenly stopped and realized that he had not completed a single quest today, which meant that he had earned nothing. He started crying and Nay said that his tears were pouring straight onto the papers. Some time has passed since his arrival at the guild. Since Taro settled in the guild, he has completely lost free time. He works here day and night, which means he doesn't even have time to rest. During the day he completes quests for beginners. He has even begun to get used to exhausting physical labor. He performed various tasks, from rescuing pets to carrying cargo and catching rodents. At this rate, he was able to save enough in half a month to repay the mob debt. Taro approached Mob and, handing him a bag of coins, thanked him for borrowing him money. Mob smiled and told him not to make too much of it. After that he shouted to those who bet on the failure of the Taro, "Let them pay." He gave him the money back. The other guild members turned sharply on him and said that this was impossible. "It's just incredible. What is this supposed to mean?" After that they paid Mob and he told Taro that he had earned so much thanks to him, so he would give him his share. Taro wiped away a tear and thought he was so cool. Nay told him that today is the payment day. Why shouldn't he spend this money on his needs? Taro looked at the coins in his hand and said that he had moved up from rank G- to G+, so he should probably go shopping. He thought that one day he would reach F- rank and then he would be able to complete quests to collect medicinal herbs in the forest or defeat one-horned rabbits or something like that. He must purchase the dagger while he has the money. He agreed and said that he would go shopping. After that, he went to the market and after walking a little along the street he heard the seller's announcement about a special drug. Taro thought that going to the store in his previous world was not something he looked forward to so much, but now everything is different. He walked up to the shop and told the woman that he would like to buy a bag. The shopping in the fantasy world is simply superb. After that, he went to a clothing store and thought that this must be the second-hand store that Nay was talking about. He remembered her telling him to make sure he had plenty of clothes, because children grow up so quickly. After that, he bought himself large clothes and a raincoat to cover himself from the rain. He examined his new image and said that the next stop was the gun shop. He walked up to the gun shop and thought that Nay definitely knew the city very well, since she even knew a shop like this. According to her, this shop is run by gnomes and he has never seen them before. He looked around and thought that it was rare to see non-human races in this city, although he had already met beastmen in the Adventurers Guild. He wonders how his first meeting with the dwarves will go. He went into a gun shop and called out to the seller. He examined the weapon with admiration and thought, "Where is the owner of the shop?" Suddenly from another room the seller asked if he had a buyer. Let him look at their products while he waits. Taro began to wait and look at the weapon. After some time had passed he thought that he seemed to be in no hurry at all. Is he still busy? He looked into another room and saw the dwarf hammering on a weapon. He turned around and remembered his customer. He measured his height with his hand and calling him a boy asked, "Is this him?" Taro confirmed his words and the dwarf asked if his parents sent him here. Taro replied that this was not the case. He pointed to the sword and asked if he was going to temper it. The gnome asked, "How is this?" Taro replied that he didn't know much about it, but it was when he forged the iron while it was still hot, then let it cool. As a result, it will harden the iron. The dwarf replied that this was the first time he had heard this, but it sounded quite logical, but wouldn't it bend the iron? He thought for a moment and said that he could always control the force applied. He awkwardly looked at the sword and said that the daggers that would suit him were on that shelf over there. He pointed his finger at the shelf and said that he could take one dagger. He gives it to him as payment for telling him about hardening. Taro looked at the dagger and asked, "Is he sure?" He didn't answer him and Taro thought that he was just itching to try it out and practice. He took the dagger and said that he would accept his kind offer. He got into a fighting stance and started swinging his new weapon. He sighed tiredly and asked the gnome what he thought about him. He didn't answer and he thought, will he continue to ignore him? He headed towards the exit and thanked him for the dagger. Now he will go. He headed back to the guild and thought that he expected this shopping trip to be anything but ordinary, but things didn't turn out the way he imagined at all. After that he showed all his purchases to Nay and she said that at his age it is absolutely normal to choose something bright. He knows that. Taro showed her his old clothes and said that these new things were much more comfortable than the clothes he was wearing. He thought that he would have to throw it away as soon as possible. Nay took his cloak and said that this cloak is not that bad. Even her evaluation showed that the material only has some defects, but it is cheap, so it's okay. Taro asked, "Assessment?" He thought, this is another word that he can hear in the fantasy world. She replied that this is one of her skills, she can use it on objects. He asked why she couldn't evaluate people. She replied that until now only part of her ability had been discovered, so she could not yet. But the skill is still extremely useful with items. She can use it to evaluate the loot that is obtained on missions, and this will save her from being scammed by merchants. At first she was shown only the name of the item, but over time this skill becomes more versatile. Taro asked what she needs to do to learn how to use this skill on people. She replied that she needed to fulfill certain conditions. The rank of the skill is also important. For example, if a person has an evaluation rank of S, he can evaluate everything and once fulfill the necessary conditions. But if the skill is rank G, then a person will never be able to evaluate people, no matter how hard he tries to fulfill the conditions. She had heard that this could be used to determine individual abilities with an S rank being assessed. Taro said that in that case, it could help him understand what his distorted text skill actually meant. She replied that it was quite possible. He told her that he had recently learned the purification skill. But is it possible to study a distorted text in a similar way? Fulfill all conditions and all that? Nay sharply grabbed him by the shoulders and asked, has he learned the skill of cleansing? This is a rare spell learned by healers. He confirmed her words and she asked if his skill was the distorted text of healers. He scratched his head and asked, is this how it works? She said that he had acquired another skill along with the distorted text, so he must be a healer who had mastered purification. He also learned the purity spell, right? He replied that this was not so. She was surprised and he asked, is it that bad? She said that purification is a high-ranking skill learned by healers, but to learn this skill, he must first master the low-ranking skill of purity, then a mid-rank disposal skill before he learns a high-rank purification skill. But if he immediately mastered purification, then this does not make him a healer, a skill that allowed him to instantly learn purification. She fell silent in thought, and Taro began to wait with anticipation for her further words. She smiled awkwardly and apologized to him. She had never heard of such a thing. He exclaimed in surprise, what? This is how the mystery of the incomprehensible Taro skills grew even stronger. After that, he began to train with his dagger. At one point Nei called out to him and asked him to come over for a minute. He wiped the sweat from his face and asked what is it. She said he did a great job today. She handed him a bag of coins and said that here was his payment. He was delighted and thought it was so great, he was just going to buy himself various things, but cannot purchase them all at once, so he needs to make a list in order of need. He looked at his list and Mob asked what he was doing. He looks like something good has happened. Taro did not answer him and only giggled joyfully, after which he headed towards the exit of the guild and Mob said that something was wrong here. He asked him to stop, but at the same moment Taro collided with Leo and fell to the floor. Leo sat down and asked if he was okay. Taro apologized to him and while Leo picked him up, he happily said that today he received his second salary of the day. Mob laughed and Leo patted Taro on the head and asked, this is what it means. That's why he's so happy. Why doesn't he take the day off today? Taro thanked him and then waved to them and left the guild. Leo and Mob saw him off and smiled. Taro was jogging down the street and suddenly stopped and remembered that he should thank the blacksmith. He went to the forge and thought that first of all he should thank him. He knocked, but no one answered him and he thought, is he not in the shop? Today he didn't come as a visitor, so he can probably come in through the back door. He entered through the back door and called a blacksmith named Angus and asked if he was here. Angus saw his silhouette in the aisle and asked who was there. It was clear from his appearance that he was very tired. He asked, is he a human child? Is he the same kid he had last time? Taro said that he wanted to thank him for giving him one of his daggers. Angus grabbed him sharply and said that it will wait, let him listen to him. Tempering the iron made it hard, but it also made it more brittle. What should he do? Taro asked him to calm down and said that he was hurting him. Angus immediately released him and asked for forgiveness. He said that he had experimented with all kinds of products since then and they all became harder but also more brittle. He remembered how he forged weapons and Taro thought that there was no point in doing this. He said that the way to strengthen hardened metal was by annealing. Hardening and annealing go hand in hand. He thought that he had at least read something similar on the internet. He said that when he forges iron, at a temperature lower than during quenching, it becomes more flexible and less brittle. Angus tried it and Taro said that it was exactly like that. When he hardens, he needs to apply a special clay to the blade, thanks to which it will cool faster and become stronger. He thought that it seemed like that was what they said on TV. Angus replied that he understood him. Taro said if he did all this, the weapon should be of excellent quality. Angus was delighted and grabbed his hand and thanked him. I think he saw a glimpse. He asked him to allow him to call him a master and Taro replied that a master was too much. He simply shared with him what he knew. Suddenly the voice of the world said that one of the conditions for activating a special skill had been fulfilled. One who knows his craft and is revered by experienced craftsmen, thus he has acquired the Eye of Truth. He was surprised by this and thought, is this an ability for evaluating objects? Angus stretched his hand and said that he would definitely do something worthwhile, thanks to the knowledge that he gave him. Let him come and visit him in a month. Taro bowed to him and thanked him, then headed towards the exit and said that he would then go. After that, he went to the market and seeing a lot of goods around him, he thought it was time for him to test his skills. He used the eye of truth and looked around in admiration. On the counter he saw a cranberry and found out that it was ripe and had a rank. Nearby he saw spoiled apples with rank G. On another counter he saw a clay vase with rank C, and next to it was an old iron armor of rank E. Not far from the counter there was a barrel in condition with rank D. He turned his gaze to the people and began to carefully examine them. But in the end he saw nothing and thought that he couldn't use this ability on people, but it was definitely useful. He picked up an orange from the counter and wondered if this is what everyday things look like today. He examined all the goods and found out that some were of poor quality and some were of good quality. If he did not have the eye of truth, he would be deceived by the appearance of these goods. But now he will be able to choose only high-quality products. After that, he began to buy goods and the saleswoman, showing him a bottle of potion, asked how about this. Taro took another bottle and said that he would take this. After that, he went to another counter and picked up the belt. The seller asked if he was confident about his choice. Taro confirmed his words and said that he was taking this belt. Then he went to the book counter and the seller, noticing that he was carefully examining the pages, asked if he could read. After passing through several counters, Taro can say that this is a good deal. He will regret if he does not buy at all. After their purchases, people began to look at him and be surprised at the number of things in his hands. He was carrying a heavy box of purchases in his hands, which obscured his view, and he smiled nervously, afraid of dropping the box. That's how he spent all his money in one day. 2 months have passed since he became an adventurer. Many guild members considered Taro to be the local gopher and jack of all trades. They often loaded him with simple or punitive missions for newcomers or trespassers, and few truly respected him as a true adventurer. His rank is still G+. If he had been promoted to F-, he would have been able to receive tasks outside the guild walls, but the guild determined his strength was not capable enough to issue an F rank. And one day a man called out to him and told him to go to the backyard. Taro walked into the backyard and saw 2 guild members training in the clearing. This man's name is Daz. He is a martial arts instructor. Daz gave Taro the sword and said that he had learned a lot since he last saw it. He can take part in their training. Taro looked at the sword with admiration and thought that they didn't like it because he couldn't attend training for the last 2 months. At that very moment Daz pounced on him and told him to show his potential. Taro quickly pulled back and he said that he had excellent reflexes. They stopped opposite each other and Taro squeezed his sword harder, after which he prepared for the blow and attacked him. But Daz blocked his blow and said that he was making too many unnecessary movements while swinging his sword. He quickly grabbed the sword and told him to brace himself. At the same moment he struck him and knocked his sword out of his hands. Taro fell to the ground and Daz said he let his guard down. He extended his hand to help him and told him that he had potential. He helped him up and told him that he needed to learn the basics of fighting to become stronger. They will start from his stand. Taro agreed, and after that moment his daily routine became even busier, cleaning the guild, asking for help, and learning martial arts. After a few such days, he tiredly fell onto his bed and said that this was all great, but there had to be a faster way. Now, he will put himself in order and go to the side. He used his purification skill and a thought came to his mind. He suddenly jumped out of bed and wondered if he could cleanse the guild with the help of purification. First, he needs to understand how powerful his spell is. He will try to start from his room. He touched the floor and used his purification ability, after which his room sparkled with cleanliness and he said that the walls were originally white. He still has enough mana left and now he will try to increase the purification range for the entire guild. He used purification and nothing happened in his room. He realized that he had to look around outside to see if anything had changed. But suddenly his strength left him and he fell to the floor. A worried Leo ran into his room and asked, "Did he do this?" Taro looked up at him with an exhausted look and remained silent. A few moments before, the entire guild was cleared of dirt and all the guild members were surprised. They started looking around and saying that their body no longer smelled. Now tired Taro was lying on the floor and apologizing to Leo. He said that it was probably him. Leo asked, is he okay? He must have run out of mana. He called him stupid and told him not to use purification for nothing. Fortunately, he should use such a skill against the undead or to remove a curse from an object. He picked him up and told him to just use the clean for regular cleaning. He put him on the bed and said that he should rest today. Taro replied that he was not finished yet. Before he could finish speaking, he fell asleep and Leo said that his mana would be restored while he slept. Using the cleanse freed up the Taro schedule for the next morning. Without cleaning, he had more time to practice his fencing. However, the training was mostly repetition of the basics. Daz told him to train until his body was able to do these movements automatically, and after that he will arrange a training battle. Taro was much younger and smaller than the other students and some of them even had their own style. Taro becoming an adventurer was an unusual event. He remembered how Nae asked him if he knew why they didn't give out high wounds to just anyone. They need to be confident in the sciences of their adventurers. After all, their profession is full of risks, so they can't let everyone dive into it without being sufficiently prepared. Remembering these words, Taro raised his sword and waved it, thinking that he was lucky. After training, I headed to the Anga's workshop. He called out to the blacksmith and he rejoiced at his arrival. He hit him on the back with joy and said that he was able to forge better swords than ever thanks to him. He is now indebted to him. She showed him the sword and said that he had forged this short sword especially for him. Will he take it? He put the sword in his hands and Taro thanked him. Angus said that he should consider it a gift from him as a token of gratitude. Taro thought that one gold coin was approximately equal to 10,000 yen. He activated the Eye of Truth and was surprised that this sword costs 150,000 yen. Angus repeated the numbers he had just spoken in surprise and Taro said that it did not matter. Did he perhaps add something to the sword? Angus replied that not really. From time to time, his random bonus skill is triggered, due to which a random bonus is added to the weapon. One day he made a sword and accidentally added 1 unit of fencing bonus to it. People then literally went crazy. Taro was surprised and, using his ability, saw that this sword added 5 units to agility and 2 units to fencing. Did he think that when people saw 1 unit they were already starting to go crazy? Then what will happen if they see it? 6 months have passed since Taro regained the memory of his past life. Even though he received it solely in the form of knowledge, it is definitely very useful. After all, in fantasy worlds it often happens that due to this knowledge he has the opportunity to become unsurpassed. But recently he realized that it is a double-edged sword. Some time ago he saw an advertisement and thought, did the traveler die from a monster attack? Another guild member asked, is this not the same traveler who came to the merchant guild with a statement? The girl said that trying to register a patent alone, without support, was a bad idea. Now, watching the training, Taro thought that apparently that smart guy tried to apply for a patent, but when his idea was registered in the name of some aristocrat, the next day he was found dead in the forest. Perhaps it will not be so easy for him to use the knowledge of his past life. Taro watched 2 guys fight and he said that one of them had a swing that was too wide, he needed to be more careful. The beastman attacked the guy and Taro said that it was a simple but technical attack. Suddenly an idea came to his mind and he realized this is a simple and technical attack. He needs something simple but technically difficult to repeat. After that, he headed to the kitchen and, looking at the black rye bread, decided to make his favorite bread from a past life, but unsanitary conditions flourish in this world. Hand washing is not common at all and besides this, there are a million other problems when preparing bread with yeast. But if successful, he will get fluffy and tasty bread. What do you mean he can eat it? He screwed on the lid with the future yeast and said that he needed to use purification and kill all the germs. After that he looked at the jar of yeast and said it was ready. At this time, Nei was watching him and thought, what is he doing? She approached him and asked why he put the Rigo fruits in sugar water. He replied that he makes bread. She asked, bread, for dessert. He confirmed her words and said that with this he would create white soft bread. It will be bread that the world has never seen before. She asked, is this true? White bread is the one that is considered a luxury and is found on the tables of only the rich. She was delighted and said that she wanted to try it too. Taro began to stir the dough and said that first she needed to mix the dough with the yeast. She said that she understood him, and after they stirred the dough, Taro told her to stir the dough until smooth. Then the dough needs to sit for about an hour and when the dough rises they need to bake it. Since they don't have an oven, they will fry in a frying pan. After a while he lifted the lid of the frying pan and said that everything was ready. However, because of the frying pan, the bread turned out to be not so fluffy. Nei smelled the aroma of freshly baked bread and said she smelled notes of Rigo fruit. At this time, in the main hall of the guild, Leo smelled a smell and thought, what is this pleasant smell? Is this bread? He burst into the kitchen and asked, are they baking bread? Taro confirmed his words and said that they baked fluffy and soft white bread. Leo broke a loaf of bread into 2 halves and thought, what is this? Bread with a crispy crust and soft inside. This is delicious. Nei told Taro it was amazing. He writes, reads, knows arithmetic, and now he also cooks bread. He laughed smugly and thought it was because he wasn't really from this world. In the cafe bar that the Adventurers Guild located next to the main building and whose visitors are mainly adventurers, a new dish has appeared on the menu. A sandwich made from their bread, meat and vegetables. Within a week, this sandwich had become a signature dish and because of this, the number of non-adventurous visitors even increased. Of course, Taro proposed this, but the guild received the patent. In return he received protection from the guild. It was a mutually beneficial deal. Taro thought that of course he loves bread, but he loves rice too. But no one in this world seems to eat it. As far as he knows, it is simply used as cattle feed. When he saw how rice grains were fed to cattle, he couldn't believe his eyes. They didn't even know how tasty it could be. It is his duty, as a Japanese in the past, to popularize rice. In fact, he just wants to eat it. He consulted Leo, but this was the first time he had heard of it, so Taro made him rice buns and let him try it. Leo reached out to the rice buns and asked what they taste like. He tasted the bun and his eyes widened in surprise. He said that this is different from that bread. Although the buns are elastic, they are still very tasty. He broke the bun into 2 halves and said that they would also produce rice flour. Taro was happy, and after that he went to see how things were going in their cafe. He looked around the corner and thought that it was very crowded. He was happy about this and now decided to think about rice dishes. He decided that he needed to cook something in a cup. First, he will cook the rice. Due to the lack of chopsticks, he will cut the meat into small cubes, so it will be more convenient for people to eat with a spoon. After that, add seasonings and fry everything. After the meat is fried, he adds it to the rice and pours sauce from the meat juice on top. He looked at the resulting dish and said it was ready. This is how they got another popular dish. All the visitors wanted to try it, and the waitresses carried this dish to all the tables. One of the visitors asked, "Did livestock feed always taste this good?" Someone saw that all the visitors were taking this dish and decided to try it too, and someone had already eaten 5 servings. Some time has passed since then. Taro added the sauce to rice to create a dish called achezuk, which contains green tea. He wished himself a bon appetit and brought the spoon with food to his mouth, but suddenly the voice of the world announced the condition for activating a special skill. Out of surprise, he spat out all the food from his mouth and the voice of the world announced that the food popularizer had been confirmed. He gained knowledge about plants. Hearing this, he looked at the plants and thought, did he get such a skill? This is another ability that can't be used anywhere. He thought that although his abilities had increased, he did not feel any changes. He decided that he needed to go look at the plants in the garden and, looking at them, he thought that nothing was happening and nothing came to his mind. What if he uses assessment? He used the eye of truth and saw only weeds in front of him. He took back his words and said that this could definitely be used somewhere. After some time, while all the guild members were going about their business, Taro entered the guild with a cat on his head, which he had to return to its owner. He told Nay that Grandpa Ted's is walking somewhere. Can he leave the cat here? She agreed and told him not to forget to write down in the reports that he successfully completed everything. He successfully completed another quest. Taro handed the cat to Nay and told him to wait here. Nay said that this cat is here more often than at home. She took the cat in her arms and told Taro that before he writes down the report, he should give her his adventurer badge. He gave her the badge and asked, but why? She took his badge and said that now he would understand everything. She looked at the cat named Tabai and asked, is this true? She put the cat on the table and put on its collar. She asked Taro to wait and went to the magic photocopier and put his badge there. After that, the copier started printing and she congratulated Taro on his promotion to F rank. She gave him a new badge and he said that it had finally happened. He thanked her and she asked if he would try the next level task right away. He agreed and said that he would go and get ready. He ran to his room and Nay thought that he had completely forgotten about reporting. Taro opened the doors to his room and saw a sword lying on the table. He put on his cloak and boots and took his sword. Now he's definitely ready. After that, he tore the quest about collecting herbs from the notice board and told Nay that he would take this quest. She was surprised and asked, does he want to take a quest to collect plants? Surprisingly, this is not hunting. She thought he would want to try out the Anga's sword. He said that he wanted to do that too, but he wanted to try something else first. He looked at the map and went into the forest. After a while, he found himself in the forest and looked around, after which he used plant evaluation. In front of him he saw a weed, a medicinal herb, an ingredient for a soup called Valveriella. He was delighted and said that it was just as he thought. After that, he put the basket on the ground and began to collect herbs. He pulled the plant out of the ground and said that this way he could easily collect them. It's very effective. After that, he found a poison herb that would be useful for antidotes. After a while he collected a full basket of herbs and said that he collected it in just 2 hours. He looked around and said that it seemed that he had gone just a little deeper into the forest. He thought that first he needed to remember how he got here. Suddenly he heard a rustling in the bushes and stopped, after which a goblin appeared from the bushes and Taro, quickly hiding, thought, where did the goblin come from in such a place? He is alone here. If he gets the timing right, maybe he can defeat it. Since this is fantasy, he will destroy the goblin and try out his new sword. But for some reason the trembling in his hands does not stop. He needs to gather his courage. First he needs to sneak closer. He began to slowly approach the goblin, but accidentally stepped on a branch and made a sound. The goblin heard this and turned sharply at him, raising his axe over him. Taro managed to block the goblin's blow in time and his hands began to tremble from resistance. But the goblin was stronger and Taro dropped the sword from his hands. After that, he immediately rushed towards his sword, but the goblin chased right after him and attacked. Taro managed to duck down and thus avoided the blow, and after that he quickly picked up his sword and moved behind it. The frightened Taro quickly turned around and closed his eyes in horror, seeing how the goblin was already striking him with an axe. Closing his eyes in fear, he pulled his sword from its sheath and was able to avoid the goblin's blow. At the same moment his speed increased and he felt it. Immediately after that he began to run and the goblin was surprised at his speed. After a moment Taro was already far away from him and thought that it was very fast. After escaping from the goblin, he continued to carry out the task of collecting herbs, and in his free time began to practice fencing. Also, he began to read books with recipes for medicines and try to repeat them in life. He learned blacksmithing from Angas, not forgetting his archery training. And the reason for such diversity is the two strange conditions for activating his distorted text skill. After his soul returned to life, he received memories of his previous life, taking a bath for the first time in several years. He fulfilled the conditions for purifying the centuries-old dirt and received the purification skill. In most cases, people will not be able to fulfill this condition, because for this they will not even be allowed to enter the bathhouse for several years. Becoming one who knows his business and revered by experienced craftsmen, he received the Eye of Truth. But without knowledge accumulated over many years of work and wisdom, this is usually impossible to do. He gained knowledge about plants due to the popularization of food, which he achieved thanks to knowledge about past life. No matter how much he thought, all these conditions are too difficult to fulfill. This is not something that can be achieved by living an ordinary life. But in any case, he hopes to fulfill the conditions for activating some skill, developing slowly but surely. Such is his character. While practicing archery, Taro shot an arrow right into Mobe's cloak and he got scared. Mobe called out to Taro with displeasure and he thought that he had overdone it. Daz put his hand on his shoulder and told him to be careful. After all, Taro sacrificed his youth and life to find himself in another world. He absolutely does not want death in this world to devalue his past sacrifices and take away the opportunity to enjoy life in this world. A few months later, at the guild members chatted with each other in a friendly manner, and Taro sighed tiredly and sat alone at the table. A year has passed since receiving memories of a past life, during which time there was nothing memorable. They developed a successful new menu for the coffee bar, and he told Angas how to create a new weapon, the katana. And having defeated the one-horned rabbit, he successfully completed his first hunting task. Yet life cannot be filled with interesting events every day. But his training bore fruit. Having tried a lot, he realized that he could skillfully handle many types of weapons. And in a world where there are skills, this is rare. Since a person's skills are based on the presence of skill and its level in such conditions, skillfully mastering something is akin to a miracle. Is it possible that his success has something to do with his obscure skill? He rose abruptly from the table and said that he was thinking too much. He headed towards the exit and decided to take the quest to collect herbs. Having gone for herbs several times, he began to leave marks on the map where he had already been. He looked at the map and said that this time he needed to go to the northeastern forest. If he goes to the same places, there will be very little medicinal herbs left. He walked further through the forest and thought that, as he thought, in any forest, the deeper, the higher the value and quantity of medicinal herbs. At the same time, he begins to feel the presence of monsters, mostly goblins, but depending on the place, he may stumble upon an orc. He collected half of the herbs and said that he would also finish early today. He picked a pepper bell from the ground and put a few in the basket. After that, he picked a purple flower from the ground and said that he had found a mana flower. Then he moved further through the forest and saw gallic grass on the roots of a tree. He was clearly lucky. Having walked a little further through the forest, he heard a rustling in the bushes. He looked around and thought, is it a hare or a goblin? He listened, and when the goblin suddenly jumped out from behind the bushes, he quickly disappeared into the thicket. Taro saw that the goblin was holding a rat and grabbed the hilt of the sword. With trembling hands, he took the sword out of its sheath and looked out from behind the bushes. The goblin was frightened by him and froze in place. He and Taro looked at each other and he decided to quickly run away from here. After he escaped, the voice of the world announced that the condition for activating a special skill had been fulfilled. The strongman who dies from the goblin is confirmed. He gained presence detection and stealth skill. Taro ran further and exclaimed why he got the skill here. After a while, he returned to the guild. Looking at his fellow guildmates, he decided to use the stealth skill. His body turned into a phantom and he thought, does this work? He waved his ghostly hand in front of Uncle Whisker and greeted him, but did not react at all. After that, he went to a girl named Ella and greeted her. She didn't answer him and Taro thought, did he really succeed? Suddenly Leo hit him sharply on the head and Taro, stroking the place of the blow, looked at him. Leo looked at him with a dissatisfied look and told him to think where he uses such skills. Taro scratched his head guiltily and thought that apparently someone could discover him after all. After that, he again went on a quest to collect herbs and, after picking one of the plants, he heard something. He thought, are these monsters? He hid behind a tree and saw a lone rabbit in the clearing. He decided that then he would immediately go hunting. He can eat the meat, the leather is in demand in the market, and the horn is always needed for medicine. He used his stealth skill and stabbed the sword into the rabbit without being noticed. The rabbit died on the spot and Taro said it was done. Stealth is quite useful when hunting. Suddenly he heard someone's steps and turned around and thought, were these monsters again? He sharply pulled out his sword and turned around, but the guy's call made him stop. He called Taro by the name of Erich and he, raising his hands up, asked him to give something to the guild. Their squad came across a horde of goblins and now there is a battle. There are about 80 of them and they need help. Taro rushed back to the guild and told them to hold out until reinforcements arrived. Erich ran back to his squad and said that he was counting on him. Before he could cross the threshold of the guild, Taro called out to Leo and said that the 5th shooting squad had fallen into a goblin trap. Leo immediately began giving orders and told his subordinates to convene the northeastern detachment and everyone who could move out right now. After everyone had gathered in the main guild building, Leo told them to listen to him carefully. The 5th Rifle Squad is now fighting the goblin to protect their city, their home. They, like their guildmates, cannot close their eyes to this. Do they agree? They unanimously confirmed his words and he said that it was time to show the strength of the Adventurers Guild. His words filled them with fighting spirit and he said that they need to split into 3 teams. Red, blue and green. He told Taro that it would be yellow. His job is to bring everyone else up to speed. The red and blue ones will save the 5th Rifle Squad, and the green ones will go behind the goblins. Leo pointed his finger at the map and asked Taro if he would take everyone to this place. After that, his task will be to coordinate everyone. He asked, is everything clear to everyone? If they work together, everything will go well. They need to do without casualties. After that, they arrived at their destination and Whisker, fighting off the goblins, asked when reinforcements would arrive. The arrows are already running out. A guy stood next to him and said that they had already arrived. After that, a magician girl approached them and cast spells on the goblins. Whisker said it took them a long time to get there. The guy asked, is everything okay? The girl helped the guy from the squad get up and told him to hold out a little longer. Another guy walked up to Taro and told him to tell the blue team to prepare an escape route. Taro replied that he understood, and handing him the bottles of potion, he said that before he left, let them take this. The guy saw the potions in his hands and said that this is a valuable thing, is he sure? Taro replied that everything was fine, he did it himself. After that, he used his stealth skill and ran towards the blue team. Having reached the blue team, he asked if they could clear the way. The girl replied that if the green team distracts the attention of the enemies, they will do it. After that, Taro went to the green team and, leaving there, told the other squad that the greens had requested support. The girl, shooting an arrow at the goblin, said that they were pressing them harder than expected. They can't breathe now, can he request reinforcements from the base? After that he ran to the base and told Leo that things were bad. There are too many goblins, not enough warriors. All units have encountered strong resistance in the rearguard and they are requesting reinforcements. Leo said that he understood everything, he did a good job, so let him return to the guild. Let him report everything to the other guild members and rest, and let him rely on them for the rest. Leo, along with another squad, went to help and met the goblins. In one movement, Leo blew off 2 goblins' heads, but did not notice another goblin behind him and was ready to take the blow, but Daz came to his aid in time and killed this goblin. Leo thanked him and together they began to destroy the goblins one by one. Daz said he shouldn't thank him. At this time, Mob prepared to strike, and with a scream, waving his sword, he cut through the bodies of the goblins. Taro watched their fight for a bit and said it was cool. Suddenly he turned around and remembered that he needed to return to the guild. After a while, he quickly returned to the guild and his fellow guildmates asked what was going on there. He replied that after Leo and the others engaged in battle, everything seemed fine. But someone should help them just in case. Taro didn't have time to finish, he fell to the floor from fatigue and his fellow guildmates called out to him in concern. After a while, he woke up on one of the beds and, looking at the cured guys, thought that it was good that everything was in order. The guy put his hand on his shoulder and said that his potions helped them a lot. With their help they fought regardless of their wounds. Taro replied that the main thing is that they are okay, he can't help them. The guy said that they saved everyone only thanks to him. Taro thought that he could help, but his lack of combat skills worries him. He more or less gets used to wielding a sword, but this is not enough. He wants to try to fight the goblin, but goblins gather in packs, it can be dangerous alone. He looked at his guildmates and thought that he could join someone in the group, but no one in their right mind would take a child into the team. He went into his room and said that it was Groundhog Day again. He lay down on the bed and tiredly said that tomorrow he would train all day again. After a while, an aged woman arrived at the guild and greeted everyone. A few days after the battle with the goblins, Taro decided to return to his herb gathering quests. He looked at the ad and approached the reception desk and told Nay that he would take this quest. He stopped short and saw that some guy was standing in front of him. Not Nay. This is a guild employee named Marco. He said that he would formalize this assignment. Taro asked where Nei is. How unusual that she is not in the guild. Marco leaned closer to him and whispered that this was just between them, but it seemed like her parents had suddenly arrived. Taro asked why he speaks in a whisper. Marco replied that they were talking about marriage. This is an important event, right? After all, there are a lot of adventurers who strive for Nei. One of the guild members overheard their conversation and asked if he just told the truth. He told the other adventurers to listen to him. It seems they came to Nei to talk about marriage. The other guild members were all surprised at once, and the guy said that he thought they had some kind of special relationship. They started crying for Miss Nei and the girl asked them to calm down. One of them said that he would attack her chosen one. Whisker told them to shut up. The guy asked Taro if he had heard anything about it. Taro replied that he had not heard anything like that. After his words, all the guild members were upset and one of them asked why Nei loves him so much. Let them use it. Taro thought that he had been dealt a hard hand. Suddenly the guy grabbed him by the shoulders and told him to follow her today and then let him tell them what he found out. Taro was surprised and said that he had already been given a task, so nothing would work out. He turned to Marco and asked, "Is this true?" Marco gave him a thumbs up and said that he hadn't finished completing this assignment yet, so it's okay. He can go. Taro was angry that he didn't play along and said that then there was nothing he could do. He said that if something happens, they will take responsibility for it. The guy shouted to go faster. They are waiting to hear from him. Taro pulled his hood over himself and the guy wished him good luck. After a while, Taro began surveillance and thought that she must be somewhere nearby. He saw it and thought that the target had been discovered. But who is the man next to her? Is this really her chosen one? He looked at him better and thought he was handsome. That would be bad news for everyone, wouldn't it? But he needs to check everything. He quickly jumped from the roof of the house into a haystack and Nei and the man turned around at the noise. A little later, Taro crawled out of his hiding place and began to watch them. He thought that the distance between them was suspicious after all. Some old man came up to him and said that he fell from above. Is he okay? Taro asked him to be quiet, and when he turned around, he didn't see Nei and realized that he had missed them. He gave chase with the thought that he needed to find them now. He already imagined how a man takes her hands and confesses his love to her, as he tells her that he wants to spend the rest of his life with her and asks her to marry him. He imagined himself getting down on one knee in front of her while Goblin Cupid scattered flowers around them. Taro was very surprised by this and thought, if everything is decided that she will get married, how can he tell the people from the guild about this? Suddenly she put her hand on his shoulder and asked what he was doing here. He pointed his finger at the man and calmly asked who it was. Suddenly he came to his senses and covered his mouth with his hand. She tilted her head to the side in confusion and said that he asked her for directions and she accompanied him. She pointed her finger at her parents and said that her parents had arrived here, maybe they should eat together. After that they went to lunch and sat at the same table. Taro nervously looked at the plate and still decided to ask, will there really be a groom's party? In surprise, Nei spat the tea out of her mouth and then she explained everything. When her mother came to the guild, all the guild members began to turn around at her and Nei called out to her in surprise. While they were chatting, Marco tried to hear what they were talking about and he wondered what they were talking about. At one point her mother asked if she didn't have a boyfriend, could they arrange a groom's viewing? Marco heard this and began to spread rumors throughout the guild. Now, she told Taro that what her mother said then was a joke. Taro remembered Marco's face and thought that he should now apologize to him. Nei's parents laughed and her mother said that such a story had never occurred to her. Her father asked if he cares about her, then when he grows up will he take his daughter as his wife? Nei asked him to stop and told him not to make Taro uncomfortable. Taro looked at their smiling faces and thought that their smiles showed how friendly and close they were. He wonders how his parents from a past life are doing. They probably received a huge shock from his unexplained death at the university, but he felt nothing but anxiety. Nei noticed his upset face and asked if he was okay. He confirmed her words and thought that he would fight in this world with all his might so that the parents from his past life would know about his adventures and think of him with pride. The next day at the guild, Taro stood awkwardly in front of the reception desk and occasionally glanced to the side. The guys who heard the rumors were also tense and looked to the side. They were kneeling in front of Taro, and Leo was closely watching them. The guy swallowed nervously and Leo threateningly stretched his fists. One of the guys asked why them. Leo said that they used Taro so that he could track Nei and find out about the groom's bride. How did it all end? They remained silent and Taro said that they just gave him a task, that's all. Leo gave him a dissatisfied look and said that means he is also a victim whom they used. Or is he wrong? Taro fell silent and Leo said that it was such a shame for them. They used the child to monitor the personal affairs of the guild employees. Nei called out to him and said that she wasn't worried about it, so don't let him be so angry with them. The guild members were delighted and said that she was a merciful angel. Leo grinned menacingly and his shadow fell on the guild members. They saw him as a formidable lion and he said that the time had come for atonement. He will give them a task for 1 month. They were upset and Leo said that in short, their task would be the most ordinary, hard, dirty and with the smallest reward. In addition, during this period they will have another important task, repairing the fortress wall. After a while they set off to complete this task. This was one of the most popular tasks among people without combat skills, because the reward for such physical work as transporting stones and lifting other heavy objects is quite large. When Taro was G rank, he could not receive such orders due to the fact that he was too weak. But Leo said that this time the reward will be good. The guild members looked devastated at their upcoming work, and Taro looked around with interest. The guys began to work, knocking on the stones with pickaxes, and Taro looked at the quarry with admiration. For some unknown reason, Taro ended up in a quarry, although he was not at all interested in transporting and laying stones. He understands how difficult the job is, so he came to help them. He noticed the leader of the quarry next to him, who greeted him and said that it was time for them to begin. He said that before they started, he would explain the basics and would not repeat it twice. He pointed to the rock and said they need to aim for the middle of it and hit it with the pickaxe. He split the stone and Taro was very surprised by this. The man gave them picks and told them they could get started. They were surprised and asked, "Is this really the whole explanation?" The man said that the ore could come away from the stone separately. If they find it, let them tell him. If the ore is valuable, he will give them a reward. Taro looked around and thought, where should he start? He used his perception and saw only limestone in front of him. But suddenly he looked to the side and was very surprised by what he saw. He looked at the pile and stones and thought, what is this? He aimed the pickaxe there and the man said that it was a pile of ordinary stones. He didn't have to touch them. Taro hit the pickaxe directly into the pile of stones and a bright light began to emanate from the resulting gap. Taro and the man looked at this in surprise and a mithril mineral with a rarity of S rank appeared from the stone. The man grabbed his head in surprise and called the rest of the guild members here and said that they had found mithril. After this, the voice of the world informed Taro that he had fulfilled the conditions for activating a special skill. The person who found the treasure on the first try is confirmed. He gained the accuracy skill. While Taro was holding the mineral, everyone gathered around him and began to look at it in surprise. Several days passed, but he still did not learn anything about the new ability of precision. But when he started practicing archery again, he realized that it definitely had something to do with it. I think he heard the term precise shot somewhere. He shot straight into the center of the target again and thought it would definitely be useful. Some time passed. Marco gave Taro a bag of coins and said that the cost of mithril was 105 gold coins. What does he plan to do with this money? Taro replied that he had something he would like to do. He remembered his fellow guildmates and thought that the fact that he could live well in this world was all thanks to them. He climbed onto the table and shouted that he was giving them all a treat. The guild members were happy about this and began to move in. While they were enjoying their drinks, Taro sat down opposite Nae and asked what he should do with the remaining money. She asked how about helping an orphanage like Mob does. Taro thought that Mob was a real good-natured guy as always. After all these events, rumors about the mineral mithril began to spread around the city. One of the passers-by asked, "Is it true that a boy from the guild found the mineral mithril?" The guy answered him that the people who were in the quarry saw it with their own eyes. At this time, guys gathered around Taro in the guild. One of them asked, if they are not mistaken, he punishes the bullies every night, right? Another guy said that he heard that he once brought back to life an old man who had died. Taro tiredly grabbed his head and, hearing this, asked who came up with this. He massaged his temples and wondered what he should do about all these rumors. One of the guys called out to him and said that if he was having a hard time, he could always turn to them for help. Tears appeared in Taro's eyes and he asked, "Is this true?" They all gave him a thumbs up and he thanked them. He thought that he was very grateful for their concern, but he should deal with these rumors himself. After that, he used his stealth skill and went to the streets of the city. He noticed a crowd of people ahead and thought what was going on there. The fascinated crowd watched the puppet show and Taro thought that something interesting rarely happens in this city. Does it seem to him, or did someone call him? He looked around and thought that this feeling was only getting stronger. He approached the crowd and mentally asked them to part. On the stage of a puppet theater, he saw a puppet version of himself holding a sword and shouting that he would defeat the goblin. The doll picked up a small crystal and said that he would sell this mithril mineral to the Viscount from Seisha, who is the owner of the estate. But what should he do with this money? Of course he will donate them to an orphanage. Taro became worried when he saw a puppet version of himself and thought that puppet theater was one of the means of passing on the customs of history to future generations. Theater used to have magical overtones, but now it is considered simple entertainment. Rumors about Taro become part of the entertainment among the common people. As it was said in his past life, people know no bounds for rumors. And now that's exactly what's happening. Thus, rumors will begin to spread more and more, and he will begin to attract too much attention to himself. He will definitely get dragged into some trouble. He needs to avoid it. He hit himself on the head and told himself to calm down. There's nothing he can do about it. It's a dangerous bet and a long-standing forbidden move, but he'll have to take advantage of it. It will be bad for the puppet theater business, but tit for tat, entertainment for entertainment. After that he went back to the guild and some time passed. Nay tilted her head to the side and called out to Taro. He asked what is it? She asked what happened. Why is he carrying so many boards? What does he plan to do with them? He replied that he just thought that in the future he would create a game for his peaceful life. She asked, is the game for a peaceful life? He said that because of him there is too much noise in the city, so he wants to create a game that will attract attention and people will forget about him. Nay asked with a smile, he means that he wants to distract people's attention from himself, right? But it will be difficult for him to create something so popular. He grinned and replied that everything was fine, he had a forbidden move. She asked, an illicit move. He looks pretty angry now. He replied that it wasn't a crime or anything, so let her relax. Only the impressions of fantastic things fade away sooner or later, although Taro could not say that he was tired of loving the fantastic things of another world. But if he brings entertainment from the past world to the present one, then it will definitely diversify his everyday life in the fantasy world. He cut out squares on the board and made checkers. He decided to call it reversey. First he needs to cut a square out of the board, then draw lines and make an 8x8 playing board. Then he needs to make white and black checkers and distribute them. And now that everything is ready, Nay asked how to play this game. Taro replied that in this game she needs to pinch and flip the opponent's checkers. The winner is the one who ends up with more checkers. When she hits a checker, she needs to use a checker of her own color and then hit a checker of her opponent's color and make sure to turn all the checkers upside down and make them her own color. Also, if she takes the corner, she will be able to control the game. Nay said that she wants to try to play it as soon as possible. They started the game, Nay playing as black and Taro as white. Nay placed a checker on the board and said that she would not lose. Nay placed a checker and turned over the opponent's checker. Black wins with a score of 4-1. Time passed, the score became 10-7 in Black's favor. Nay asked what is the best way for her to go. She made a move and the score became 23-18 in favor of Black. Taro said that she was playing well, now White was winning with a score of 23-24. In the end, Black won with a score of 40-24. Nay was happy and said that she had won. She can't believe that she won the man who created the game. Taro asked if they could play it again. She was surprised and Taro said that this time he won't lose. Nay said that he still doesn't seem to understand how strong she is. Taro thought that he was serious this time. They started the game, Nay played with black checkers and Taro with white. After a while, Nay stretched tiredly and said that it was easy but at the same time a little difficult. He didn't give in to her in the first game, did he? He scratched the back of his head and replied that it was not so. She exclaimed that he was lying. But this game is really interesting, I'm sure everyone will be happy to play it. Taro was delighted and thought that, however, there was one nuance. The nuance is who will be registered as the creator in the Merchant Guild. Until now, recipes from his past life were not recorded because it was food. Some secretly tried to copy them, but the original dishes from the guild's cafe bar remained the most delicious. There was no establishment that would dare to openly imitate since they were afraid of the Adventurers Guild. But what about this game? They asked what he plans to do. He replied that he thought about using the guild name when registering reversey, but when it comes to registering with the Merchant Guild, you need the name of the person who created the goods. Leo is the head of the branch and his temper is well known, so perhaps he is not the best candidate. They need someone they can trust, a person who does not reveal secrets and is not greedy for money and also has strong support. But there is no such person, right? They thought about it and a thought came to her mind. She replied that of course there is such a person, and he knows him very well. Taro asked, "Are you familiar?" He slammed his fist into his palm and realized what she meant. Of course it's Mob. He is sincere and donates money to the orphanage, belongs to a guild and is one of the strongest adventurers in the city. They asked, did he guess? She is confident that he will continue to continually donate a portion of his income to the shelter. She knows that he is now trying to raise the level of his team to B rank. She thinks he will be happy to help him. Taro remembered Mob and thought that he could definitely be trusted. After a while they went to Leo's office together. Mob said the more revenue there is, the better off the shelter will be. Besides, he was already thinking about going outside with his team to improve his skills. He looked at Taro and asked, but is he really sure? It may be okay now, but when reversey becomes popular, will he regret it? Taro replied that he would receive a share of the profits, but now he would not be dragged into trouble, so on the contrary, it was a great success for him. Mob laughed and said that was also true. He nudged him in a friendly manner and said that this was a mutually beneficial matter. Taro asked, is everything okay then? Mob extended his hand to him and confirmed his words. They shook hands, and after a while Taro began making playing boards. He looked at the game board he had just made and said that he would make a regular board for the common people, but he needed to provide limited edition options for collectors and aristocrats. He will make this board larger with legs and put patterns on it. After all, he has a newly acquired ability of precision. This will certainly help him. He used his ability and began to saw the boards. He said that with this ability he could easily measure the length. His hands and eyes work with greater precision. With this skill he can become a first-class carpenter. He wiped the sweat from his face and looked at his work. He made a super rare playing board for Reversi that has patterns carved on it and costs 15 gold coins. They called out to Taro and said that this is a real work of art. He thanked her and some time passed from that moment. He looked at his game board and said that just because a product sells well does not guarantee that it will sell well. Advertising plays an important role. He looked at his guildmates and thought that was why he had developed a special strategy. He gave a sign for them to begin and they understood him. The guy took the checker in his hands and loudly asked what kind of game this was. "It's too exciting." A man approached him and asked what kind of game this was. The guy replied that he had never played this before. It was a completely new game. The man came closer to him and said, "This all looks interesting. Can he play?" The guy told him to try, but let him be careful. This lady is a strong opponent. The man sat down in the guy's place and asked the girl to be gentler with him. She did not agree, and at that time, on the second floor, someone was discussing this game. Some time passed, the man beat the girl in the game and she said that he was a real genius. He won. After that, the man plunged into the game and his fellow Taro guildmates helped him spread the news about the new game. Everything went according to plan. With the help of a good advertising strategy, they managed to get people interested in the game and they began to buy playing boards. In just a few hours, a large queue of people wishing to buy Reversi had formed. The line even started outside the guild. Thanks to Leo's help, they were able to spread something completely unfamiliar to everyone. Some have already received a limited edition as a gift, which they began to tell other people about. He also granted the right to allow sales to merchants who had a deal with the Adventurers Guild. In the city of Seishi, which has little entertainment, young people immediately became interested when they learned that a new popular game had appeared. The rules of the game are easy to understand, so even children started playing this. Suddenly he stopped and saw a crowd in front of him. He became interested in what was there and decided to squeeze forward. In the center of the crowd, two old men were playing Reversi and Taro thought that even the elderly people were interested in this game. The old man put a checker on the board and people exclaimed that Grandpa Tia occupied almost the entire middle of the board. Another old man began to turn over the checkers and someone from the crowd said that Mr. Bjorn was seizing the initiative. He turns over more and more checkers. Taro looked at their game and thought that this game was better than he thought. Everything went according to plan. Time passed, the guy called out to Mob and said that sales were going great. Not only cheap, but also expensive versions are sold. Mob replied that this was good, but he left the sale to the guild, so let him tell them about the success. The guy walked away happily and Taro approached the notice board. Mob turned to him and asked did he hear what he just said. Taro confirmed his words and said that he had already spoken to Leo about expanding production bases in other cities. Mob smiled and said that then they could have a fight together in the big city. He thanked him and extended his fist to him. Taro also thanked him and they fist bumped each other. 6 months later, Team Silver Sword was promoted to rank B after completing a high-rank mission in Seishi City. They went to the big city with a letter of recommendation from the head of the guild branch, Leo. Now, Taro was sitting in his office and he was looking at him intently. Taro cowered under his gaze, but did not continue to take his eyes off him. Taro began to noticeably worry and thought that he did not like moments like this. He nervously swallowed his saliva and Leo whispered something quietly and Taro thought, what did he just say? At the same moment Leo loudly hit the table with his palm and he got scared. Leo sighed wearily and said that he was pleased to see how adventure lovers from different places get together, but their moral qualities leave much to be desired. The population suffers from this and troubles arise, as well as the reputation of the guild deteriorates. Their current high-ranking adventurers are the C-ranked 5th Marksman Squad and the C-ranked Blue Defenders Squad formed as a result of an urgent announcement. Taro listened to Leo's grumbling from the very beginning, although they were supposed to discuss a plan to expand the Reversi production network, but Leo continued to say that compared to the Mob Team's Silver Sword rank, they still have a long way to go. The security situation in their territory is getting worse, and they asked the Lord to increase the number of soldiers in the territory, but it did not bring any results. Therefore, they were given the responsibility of catching bandits and robbers and suppressing crime. Leo's grumbling did not stop, but at one point he sighed heavily and said that sales of Reversi in their store were going very well. They get commissions, but Taro was glad that they were finally back on topic and leaned forward a little. He asked, but Leo said that he heard from the merchant that he was about to receive a large order from the royal capital, and it seems he also wants 10 of his limited playing boards. Taro exclaimed, as many as 10. After all, the royal capital is different. Leo said that in general he still wants him to accompany his trading caravan. Taro was surprised and asked what he just said. Leo said that it seems that he wants him to become his mentor in Reversi and go to the royal capital for 1 month. Taro replied that Reversi does not need a mentor. There are easy rules, right? Besides, he's still a child. Leo replied that it looks like nothing can be done since he insists. He probably doesn't like being the center of attention. No one knows him in the royal capital, and there is nothing wrong with him looking at the capital when he is young. Taro sighed tiredly and Leo said that he had also been promoted to E rank. Taro was surprised and asked why so suddenly. Leo got up from his chair and looked out the window and said that simply E rank adventurers who came from other places were worthless. There is no choice but to increase it and balance it out. He smiled and congratulated him on his promotion. Taro looked at his smile and thought displeasedly that he was so happy. Leo said that he was counting on his help before leaving. Taro rose from his chair and said that he understood him. After that, he went on a herb gathering mission and found a herb called Poizu. Evening came, Taro was already at the guild and was cutting out limited edition playing boards. Thanks to his ability to be precise, delicate work comes easily to him. Night came, 2 guys were playing Reversi and one of them asked, well, will he walk? At the next table they were also playing this game, but at one point the guy suddenly stood up from the table and knocked over the game board along with the checkers. During this time, Taro was helping Nei at the front desk. Someone handed him a paper and Taro said that he would take care of it. Nei handed Taro the documents and the adventurer told his friend to look at it. The boy leans inside the guild in the provincial division. His friend agreed with him and said that he was a real eyesore. He watched him for a while. He wondered since when did the guild babysit children. His friend said that he did not understand the thinking of the villagers. Taro looked at their icons and thought that these were the worthless E-rank adventurers Leo was talking about. Taro's friends heard this and the guy said that because there were children hanging around the guild, it cast a shadow on their heroic images. Suddenly a voice came from the side that he had better look at himself. The guy rose sharply from the table, slamming his palms on the table. His name is Roy. He is the leader of the Blue Defenders team and he has a C rank. He approached them and said that he didn't know what they were trying to achieve, but the boy they were just talking about was Taro and he was a wonderful adventurer. And he has the same rank as them. Other guildmates agreed with him and the guy laughed and asked, is the boy an adventurer? And he has the same rank as them. He's probably had too much, so he's talking all sorts of nonsense. Roy exclaimed that it was true. He doesn't know what place he came from, but the level of adventurers here is higher than in other places. The branch head and martial arts instructor are former A-rank adventurers. Therefore, under the guidance of such people, even children become stronger than them. Taro's friends surrounded them and one of them said that after his words, they look so poor. Serves them right. They will be better than them. The two friends began to look around and became worried. After that, they headed towards the exit of the guild and apologized to them. Hearing their conversation, Taro thought, branch head Leo and instructor Daz are former ranks. Roy called out to Taro and asked if he was okay. The girl came up to him and told him not to pay attention to them. He is a wonderful adventurer. Taro thanked them and said that he really didn't care what they said. They breathed a sigh of relief and Taro thought that he had so many good comrades. A tear rolled down his cheek and he thanked them all. The next day those two guys quickly left the guild and in the afternoon some man came. At this time, Taro was standing at the notice board and looking for something. A man entered the guild and saw Taro. Nei, as always, was behind the reception desk offering the adventurer a quest. She saw that the man walked past her and headed straight towards Taro. Step by step he approached Taro, but he did not notice him. When the man's shadow covered Taro, he exclaimed, "What is he doing here?" He called him a stupid boy and said that he had run away from home. Taro quickly turned around and saw his father in front of him. Without waiting for an answer, he demanded that he answer him and the next moment he swung his hand and told him not to dare ignore him. He raised his fist over him and wanted to hit, but Taro reacted in time and, with the help of agility, quickly dodged the blow. His father saw that Taro was not in his original place and was surprised. He turned around and asked who said he could dodge. Taro didn't react and his father attacked him again, but he dodged. His father wanted to hit him again, but he dodged and ended up tripping over his own foot. He tried to keep his balance, but ended up falling to the floor and Nei, hearing the noise, came running and asked what was going on here. A guild member told her that this guy decided to swing his fists inside the guild. The girl helped him up and asked him to calm down. Taro's father did not listen to her and grabbed his son by the hand. He asked where he lives. Let him take his things, they are coming back. Taro pulled his hand out of his grip and replied that he was not going to return. His father wanted to hit him again and exclaimed, "How dare he talk to his father like that?" Taro dodged again and moved behind him, thinking that he had not changed at all. He wants to kick his ass, but he better not use force within the guild. He told him that they would disturb everyone here, so he invites him to go outside and talk. Nei asked if everything would be okay. After that they went to the tavern and his father asked where he put the money from the sale of the mineral. He is his parent, which means that his things are also his things. Let him give him everything he has earned. While his father was screaming, Taro thought that apparently the rumors had reached the village after all. Having heard a story related to big money, he suddenly remembered that he was his parent, something he had previously preferred not to remember. He replied that he did not have money so that he could give him anything. His father called him a brat and wanted to hit him, but Taro pushed his hand aside and thought that he wondered when he would realize that he would not get anything. Spluttering, his father began calling him an insensitive idiot. Who does he think took care of him throughout his childhood? Taro replied that he had no memories other than the ones where he kicked him and abused him in other ways. His father replied that it was just education. Two guys approached them and one of them asked, was he able to get money out of his son? The guy leaned over to Taro and asked, so he is Taro. His father owes him money, so he must pay him, otherwise his father will be in trouble. Taro thought, do they want him to pay for his father? His father got scared and said that he would pay them as soon as he could. Taro wondered how he should react to this. He asked if they had an Ayu. The guy replied that of course there is. He showed him some paper and Taro asked, this is not an Ayu, right? The guy was surprised and asked if he could really read. Taro said that this is a written order from their boss. It says that first they need to talk to him politely, find out how much money he has, and get everything they can out of him. Since it is not an Ayu, he will not pay. Moreover, he does not think that this man is his father, so he will not pay them. His father slammed his fist on the table and said that this boy is lying. At that very moment the woman stabbed the table with a knife and told them that they were being rude in front of the other guests. Let him be careful, because if he has anything against Taro, everyone in this city will become his enemy. He had better not tempt fate. One of the tavern visitors agreed with the owner and said that Taro is always paid for in this shop. He donated the rest to an orphanage, now everyone knows about it. The guys looked at the tavern owner and thought that it was immediately obvious that she was a former adventurer. One of them started running. His friend asked the saint where is he going. Taro asked them to wait and the guy asked what he wanted. If he doesn't want to pay then let him leave them alone. Taro said that even though he cut all ties with him, he caused them inconvenience. He will pay compensation. He tossed them a gold coin and said that no written confirmation was needed. The guy caught a gold coin and was very surprised by it. One of them started running and they ran after him. Taro turned around and bowed to the hostess, apologizing for the inconvenience caused. She replied that there was no problem. Taro smiled, and at this time a man was watching him. After that, Taro went on a quest to collect herbs, and this man began to chase him. Taro felt something was wrong and thought, bad things don't come one at a time, right? He saw a man with a crossbow in front of him and prepared to attack. A few minutes ago Taro was collecting herbs and noticed someone behind a tree. The man looked out from behind the tree and with the help of his skill he saw on it a sword made by Angas. The man was very surprised by this and decided to come out of his hiding place. He said that let him give this sword to him. Taro sighed and thought, really again. After that, he touched the ground and used the presence detection skill. Through this, he learned that there were several local adventurers nearby, after which he turned around and decided to flee. Currently they were standing opposite each other and the man said that this sword does not suit him, he better give it to him. Taro started screaming that he wanted to steal his sword. Other adventurers immediately came to the rescue and one of them asked what happened. Is this Taro's voice? Did something really happen? They quickly ran to him and asked what happened. Taro thought it was great, here are the witnesses. The man shot at him with a crossbow and Taro thought that, moreover, he was the first to attack him. Using his agility and stealth, Taro threw a basket of herbs at him and thought it was self-defense. The man dropped the crossbow from his hands and the adventurers asked Taro if he was okay. They surrounded the man and Taro thought that now he could finally go on a mission. After the incident he returned to the guild. He looked at the large amount of wood and decided to make the remaining playing boards from the limited collection. He began to carve patterns on the board and thought that with the help of his precision ability he could cut wood very finely. He spent some time creating the boards and finally he said that now all 10 are ready. He made 10 limited edition playing boards that will go to the royal capital. He was delighted and stretched his shoulders and said that he did it in a short time, but still it was difficult, even with his ability. If he makes one good product, then with the help of the precision ability he can make many literally the same products. Of course, without creativity and accompanying talent, he will not be able to create a good thing. It's good that he studied fine arts properly at school. Some time passed, he was sitting at the table and playing a game with his friend. Someone called out to him and asked if he was on time. Taro turned around and saw in front of him Paul, a merchant in the city of Seishi. Paul asked if he was able to make some playing boards. Taro was happy to see him and said that he had finished 10 pieces. Paul was surprised and said that he thought that if he made 6 pieces it would be good. He shook his hand and asked if maybe he wants to finish the path of an adventurer and take up this business. Suddenly Leo hit him on the bald top of his head and told him not to try to lure away his talented man with a great future. Paul turned around and said that his talent deserved more generous payment. Leo smiled and said that if he lured him away, he would break the deal with his company. Paul apologized to him and said it was just a joke. Leo replied that he looked very serious. They both laughed and Taro asked, then what should he do with the products that will go to the royal capital? Leo thoughtfully stroked his beard and asked if they already know something about Taro's partner. Paul replied that it looked like his partner was one of the aristocrats. He turned to Taro and said that he should sew new clothes right now. He would introduce him to the tailor. Taro asked if he needed new clothes. He thought that their conversation was going on too long, it was starting to bother him. After a while, Leo and Nei went out to see Taro off on his way. Leo said that they had better move out now, it could be dangerous at night. Not only can they encounter magical creatures, but there are also rumors about robbers. He called out to Taro and asked why he didn't put on the uniform that the tailor had made for him. Nei approached Taro and asked where his new clothes were. Taro closed the chest with things and asked what. She said upsetly that she really wanted to look at his new clothes. He replied that it was a dress uniform for aristocrats, so it was not something he should travel in. They continued loading and Taro, climbing into the cart, told them that he was off. Nei waved her hand and wished him a good journey. Some time has passed since the start of the trip. Taro's first trip went without any problems. After all, they were driving on the main road. There are a lot of people walking and driving on this road. There are also soldiers at the stops, so it is very safe here. Based on his ideas about fantasy, he thought that merchants were usually attacked on the road. But it seems that he was worrying about this in vain. He looked at his companion, Mina, who was a C-rank solo adventurer. He called out to her and asked if the man driving nearby seemed suspicious. Doesn't she think so? He thinks he is appreciating them. Mina looked at the man and suggested that maybe he had an assessment skill. They need to be more careful. Taro asked what she thought about their caravan. She replied that from the outside their caravan looked like 3 horse-drawn carriages loaded with many things. 10 guards, 3 coachmen, 3 passengers, including Paul and a child. They need more people to attack a group of 17 people. The only question is whether they should risk committing crimes right on the main road. After some time, they stopped to rest and went into a local tavern. Mina and Taro began to eat and at one moment suddenly looked in one direction. Taro asked, did something happen? Mina replied that she had a bad feeling. Taro wondered if it was possible that the robbers' target had changed to the trade caravan that was behind them. According to the soldiers who checked the scene, when the robbers left, everything was like that. According to the report, the caravan was completely destroyed, with no one left alive. Reality turned out to be not so sweet. The horses continued to drag the 3 caravans past the fields, and after a while they arrived at the wall of the capital. Mina called out to Taro and said that they could already see the royal capital. Taro looked out the window. He was blinded by the rays of the sun and he saw ahead a long fortress wall, which could not be compared with the wall in the city of Seishi. Paul said that the closer they get, the more majestic the wall will seem to them. They drove up to the wall and looked around the capital with delight. They raised their heads up and looked at the majestic gates in front of them. Taro said that he got really excited. Mina came up to him and said that he had already opened his mouth. They froze in place and began to wait for the gate to open completely. The gates opened and they saw the main street of the capital in front of them. Taro looked at the city with admiration and thought that it was as if he had entered another world. There are even races here that he has never seen. Paul called out to him and said that they were heading to the main department of the company. Let him follow them. Taro nodded and thought that he had completely forgotten about it. He went with them and after a while they reached their destination. Whisker told Paul that then, just in case, they would inform the guild about the incident with the robbers and the successful completion of the task. Paul agreed and said that then they would meet here in the morning, in 5 days. He called out to Taro and Mina and asked what about them. Taro replied that he would go with them and the others. Mina said that she is Taro's partner, so she also needs to go with him. Taro said goodbye to his guildmates and asked, the 5th squad of shooters is very familiar with the royal capital, right? Mina replied that this is not the first time they have performed such a task. She, by the way, too. He asked if she was already used to it. She replied that it was not much. She pointed her finger at the tower and said that if he suddenly gets lost, then let him follow the huge tower. Taro asked, she's been lost before, right? She replied that she had been looking for the way to the guild headquarters for half a day and finally noticed this tower. Taro wondered if she was serious or just joking. After a while they arrived at the place where they would spend the night. Taro looked around the luxurious room with delight and thought that it was his first time staying in such a hotel. He said that the hotel of this world is wonderful, but he wonders if everyone has such conditions. Mina replied that this is only in this hotel. The hotel she usually stays at is 5 times cheaper. Taro asked in surprise, 5 times cheaper. Mina said that since he is going to teach the nobles how to play reversi, he needs to stay at a decent hotel to make the right impression, right? Taro replied that it sounded logical. Mina agreed and asked, he doesn't want to be treated with disdain. Taro replied that he was starting to get nervous. Mina said that if he is nervous now, how will he cope next month? He agreed with her and said that there was a whole month ahead. He already wanted to return with everyone in 5 days. Mina gave a thumbs up and told him to cheer up. After that, she left his room and told him to take a bath and have a good rest that night. After that, they said goodbye and Taro went swimming. The next morning, he greeted a tired Mina and wished her good morning. She doesn't seem to feel very well in the morning, right? She replied that she was just in a bad mood. Taro thought that she didn't seem to like getting up early. After waking up, they went to breakfast and grabbed a couple of sandwiches. They tried the sandwiches and didn't like it. Taro examined the sandwich and said that this white bread was somehow too hard. Mina said that the cafe bar at their guild branch has special bread. Here, this white bread is still considered a luxury item. Taro thought, at what point did he get used to luxurious food? He said upsetly that he wanted to eat ginger meat. Mina started drooling and said that she also remembered this. Mina was also a regular customer of the guild's cafe bar and therefore she knew a lot about taste. After breakfast, they headed to the trading company and Taro said it looked amazing. A man came out of the building and said that their trading company Garfish was still far from the success of the capital. This man's name is Garfish. He is 45 years old and he is a representative of a trading company. He invited them in and said that when the reversey from Paul came to him, and once it became clear that the game had potential, they took all the initiative. Inside the room, Taro saw his 35-year-old wife Isen, his 8-year-old daughter Marta and 2 sons, 13-year-old Atsuka and 18-year-old Mark. Garfish said that in addition, his children are big fans of Reversey. He thought that this game would definitely sell well in the royal capital, so he first sold this version to people with whom he had connections. As expected, it became a sensation. Taro replied that he was pleased to hear this. He was sure that his teacher Mob would be happy too. Taro is only playing the role of Mob's apprentice inventor, so he needs to choose the right words. Garfish snapped his fingers and said that he was his student, and at the same time he has the ability to create works of art that are produced in limited editions. And at his age this is truly amazing. Taro awkwardly scratched his head and asked him to keep it a secret. Garfish was surprised and said that he understood everything. And it's true, if the aristocrats find out about this, he will simply be bombarded with requests. He told everyone that he was a simple worker from the city of Seishi, so in the future it seems better to him this way. Well, as a price for silence, can he ask him for 1 board from a limited edition? Taro awkwardly shook his hand and thought that this was to be expected from a real merchant, but now he won't tell anyone anything. The next morning they arrived at the upper aristocratic residential quarter. Taro looked out the window and said that the landscape had changed so much, it worried him a little. There were such huge buildings everywhere. Paul wiped the sweat from his face and told him to relax. It was his first time here too, so he was a little surprised. Taro thought that when he watched Paul worry, his excitement began to intensify. He looked at the calm Mina and admired her composure. She noticed his look and said that she is just an escort, so she is not worried. If she were in his place, she would have already wet her pants from fear, so don't let him worry so much. Taro thought, what kind of strange comparisons are these? Paul and Mina laughed and their carriage stopped in front of a large, magnificent mansion. But whose mansion is it?